Naugatuck+Valley. Thanks, Desiree. On behalf of Naugatuck+Valley Council of Governments, I want to welcome you all today to our second session of the Aquifer Protection Areas Moving Towards Compliance Workshop Series. And we really want to thank the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Aquifer Protection Area Program for being our partner on this, as well as the City of Norwalk, who has graciously loaned us our APA champion for today, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we begin, I wanted to just give a little bit of background on the series for those of us who may be joining us for the first time. So for this series, we want to provide the service to the NVCOG municipalities and beyond to break down the pathway to compliance and connect you to DEEP staff who can support you in answering questions as you work on moving towards compliance for Aquifer Protection Areas. We also wanted to provide you technical support along the way. Today's session at the end will have plenty of time for question and answer with our APA champion, Alexis, and DEEP staff, who will also be available. And that is something to keep in mind if in the last month you've had any implementation questions come up. Definitely have them ready for the second half of this hour. The presentation will be recorded for people who can attend, but to encourage conversation, we will not record the Q&A portion. That way you can openly ask any questions you have without fear of it being posted online. And you should have received a zip file folder in the last day or so that has many resources, and some of them are actually from Alexis herself from Norwalk, sharing different resources that you can use, you can make your own to help you with the Aquifer Protection Area program. And we will go throughout the series, we will refer back to that zip file folder and try to help you walk through some of the resources that may be helpful to you. So please reach out if you have any trouble accessing that and if you have any questions regarding that. So today's session will focus on best practices for your APA program. And it features Alexis Carichetti. Let me change here. It features Alexis Carichetti. And so I just want to introduce her and then I'll pass it over to her. So Ms. Carichetti has been engaged in municipal environmental planning and administration for more than 20 years. She is currently the Senior Environmental Officer and Assistant Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Norwalk. Her educational background focused on hydrology with a bachelor's degree in geology at University of Delaware and a master's in geology at the University of Vermont. She dabbled in environmental education before being hired to perform inland wetlands inspections for the town of Wilton. She began her work following that first foray in municipal government. She began her work for the City of Norwalk in 2001, administering the inland wetlands regulations. Since then, she has regularly expanded her role in the city's other regulatory programs that have connection to the environment. She currently provides oversight and administration of Norwalk's inland wetlands and watercourses, aquifer protection, coastal area management, and flood hazard regulatory programs. So we are very fortunate to have Alexis with us today to share her best practices with us and just also be here to have a peer-to-peer conversation with a fellow implementer. So thank you, Alexis, for being here. And at this time, I will stop sharing and pass it over to you.
Thanks, Molly. So just a shout out, thanks to NVCOG and to Connecticut Deep for hosting this series. It's a fantastic resource that I think a municipality is very lucky to have you guys with this kind of programmatic assistance. So thank you very much. And I will share my screen here. Let's see. All right. I think that's working.
We can see your presenter mode, so I'm not sure if there's a way to fix that.
Okay. Oh. So it's not,
Are you using multiple screens?
I am.
Maybe you can swap the two screens,
Okay.
like swap what you're using on each screen.
All right, hold on. Any better?
Okay, so
Yes.
now we see.
All right, hold on. Let me restart. I'll move this over here.
I think I think it was really close before when you switched it, and all you had to do was press presentation mode. I think you were.
Yeah,
Right.
it wouldn't let me for some reason when I did press presentation modes. Hold on, let me try just by the screen, maybe.
Looks great. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So sorry about that. No presentation is complete without some kind of technical difficulty on Zoom. So glad we got that out of the way. So yeah, I think I'm here to talk about how Norwalk has implemented aquifer protection program over the years. And just to get you geographically situated, this is Norwalk. We're down on Long Island Sound in the southwest corner of the state. This is the Merritt Parkway, Route 15, I-95 down here, and the blue blob is our aquifer protection area. The main one, I should say. We actually have another small bit of aquifer protection in the northwest corner of the state. That's the city, which is completely residential and has been fairly easy to administer that area. This is just kind of a timeline of what we've done in Norwalk. I'll go through that, and that will kind of set the basis for what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes. And going back to 2004, that was my first email correspondence with Kim Zapla, and you should definitely reach out to Connecticut Deep and Kim and her crew. They are an excellent source of information. 2004 was also the year that Norwalk's government established the Zoning Commission as the Aquifer Protection Agency for the municipality. Then there was a gap of activity until late 2007 and early 2008, when we finally started pushing letters out to all of the potentially impacted businesses and property owners within our aquifer protection area. And we started to obviously have a lot of meetings about the draft regulations. And our regulations were finally adopted in 2009 with an effective date of August 1st. And then 2010, we began our initial annual inspections, which I'll talk about later. We started with 35 registered facilities that we had to register in 2009 and 2010. And once we started inspecting, we also did our first enforcement letters in 2010 as well. And then I'll fast forward to this year. We're now down to 31 facilities because of vacancies. This year we'll start our 4th round of 5-year registrations. We've processed 96 applications for either registration, initial registration, registration renewal, or registration transfer. We've issued 40 written enforcement letters, and we've completed more than 400 annual inspections. And so I just want to point out on the timeline, obviously this middle section here was a lot of memorable work. And this is from 2008 through 2010 was when we adopted the regulations and really kind of went through that first push of initial registrations, finding all the facilities that needed to register, and kind of figuring everything out. The gap here, the city of Norwalk has, it's not easy to be an aquifer champion. And Norwalk definitely struggled with how the city was going to administer this. And that's why there was a gap between 2004 and 2007 as the city kind of figured it out. And then after 2010, after we finally got out there, we had our registered facilities and we knew what we were dealing with. Once we had our processes in place, it really has been easy. And the years between 2010 and 2004 have been really quick and generally not too bad. So I'll just kind of go over what I think are the keys to success for your own municipalities. And the first is taking it seriously and understanding that you are protecting an invaluable and limited resource, which is drinking water supplies. And so that your administration of this program has a lot of potential for real impact. And then connected to that is being ready to tell people why this work is important. Not a lot of people know what an aquifer is or what the aquifer program is about, but everyone understands that drinking water is important. And so being able to articulate that to whether it's the registered facilities or to your local government, that's definitely a BMP. The other message is that once you have figured out who your registered facilities are and you've done that initial registration, you need to do a few kind of process-oriented stuff, but then it does get easier. So that's important to know. And part of that process is to make a spreadsheet, and we'll talk about this later. Make a way to keep track of those registered facilities and come up with a way to keep an eye on the Aquifer Protection Area itself and all the other businesses that may be there that don't need to be registered. And then the third step that I think is key is come up with a process that keeps aquifer protection in your municipal permitting process. So each town has a process or steps for working your way through a building permit or a tenant fit up. And you need to set up a process to make sure that new businesses coming in don't need to, aren't prohibited under the aquifer regulations. So I'll go over my BMPs. And the first is the pitch. If you think of like a business, they have their elevator speech where they explain, you know, their pitch for aquifer regulation. You really need to kind of come up with a quick, concise description of what you're doing. And so these are just some examples, explaining that all drinking water starts as rainwater, and that for the area that your business is in, rainwater travels to the ground easily. A lot of drinking water supply, but easily contaminated. And that's why we're doing this, is to protect groundwater. So I feel like I say this or some version of this on repeat all the time. So I'd encourage you, if you are administering the aquifer regs, to come up with your own pitch, your way of describing what an aquifer is and how your program is going to protect it. And that's key to getting people to comply. And so I'll start with kind of the initial program launch. I think a lot of the municipalities in the Naugatuck+Valley COG, I think you've gone through a lot of these initial steps, but if not, this you can either, if you haven't, here are some tips, and then you can always kind of go backwards to make some changes if you want. So in Norwalk, I think this is an old slide from Kim, but a lot of towns use their Planning and Zoning Commission, also acts as the Aquifer Protection Area Agency. In Norwalk, the zoning was at the time just the Zoning Commission was appointed to act as the Aquifer Protection Agency. But that doesn't mean that it was necessarily zoning staff that administered it. The city of Norwalk looked at the health department staff, zoning department staff, conservation office, which was me, and as a office of one, public works department, our water pollution control authority staff, and our building department staff. And spoiler alert, they ended up going with the conservation office. So I think towns need to kind of figure out the best combination of who is the agency and then who is their duly authorized agent. And that can be different for everyone. One of the key things that I'd recommend if you haven't adopted the regulations is before you adopt them, you start finding and reaching out to all the facilities within the Aquifer Protection Area. This is me 20 years ago looking for facilities. And that really involved driving around and taking note of all businesses operating within the Aquifer Protection Area. We sent out close to like a year and a half before the adoption of the regulations, sent out lots of letters to all businesses, letting them know that the city was going to adopt these regulations, and it would be in their best interest to come to the public information sessions that we hosted. And I think it's important to find all the facilities that need to register beforehand, because they're going to be better off. If what you don't want is to have a facility that should have been registered but didn't, because that's more problem than it's worth. So find all facilities, and I recommend sending letters to all businesses, whether you think that they are likely to be a registered, need to register or not. And then engage in your water company. There are different, lots of different water companies out there, but a lot of times they have a lot of eyes on the ground already as far as things that they're concerned about for protecting their areas of water contribution. So reach out to them and see if they can help you identify facilities that are likely to need to register. And then next up is program structure. And I will stress that one of the most successful parts of the Norwalk program is that we do have required annual compliance inspections. And these inspections have been key in keeping staff tuned into aquifer protection regulation annually. And it's also been important, a connection with the registered facility owners and kind of keeping them on track. So this is our compliance form that we use each year to check up on everyone. And we've taken the text pretty much out of section 12 of the model regs that go through the best management practices that the registered facilities need to be doing. And so again, Norwalk has 35 facilities, or had 35 when we started. And so we're just doing this inspection for those registered facilities, not you know, all businesses in the aquifer protection area, just to clarify that. And what's really nice about these annual inspections is that it allows kind of real world application of BMPs, even though I think the language of the regulations is pretty straightforward. You know, it talks about hazardous material needs to be not exposed to stormwater. Hazardous material needs to have secondary containment. It should be on a non-permeable floor. You know, these things, they're pretty straightforward, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the facilities are actually implementing them. Even when they are self-certifying that, yes, they are, they're often not. Annual inspections also allow us to have additional opportunities to inform and educate facility operators. And it also gets us into the aquifer protection area. And, you know, as you're driving around, you're kind of on the lookout for other facilities that are potentially prohibited at this point. So highly recommend annual compliance inspections be worked into your program structure. To be honest, back in, there was that gap between 2004 and 2007 where we were trying to figure out how to get this program running. The annual inspection came up as more of a monetary thing and not necessarily focused on enhanced compliance. I had asked for an additional staff person and had been told that the city could work out this additional staffing, but they really need to see some kind of revenue annually, even if it was token revenue. And so initially the idea of an annual inspection came up as a fiscal solution to getting additional staff for both aquifer and inland wetland inspecting. So some things, you know, it's not necessarily easy, but if you are, I guess, if you have a hurdle, try to turn it into something that in the long run is going to work out for the aquifer protection program. So the annual facility inspection definitely completed two things. It did get an additional environmental staff person, but as I said, it's also been instrumental in successful completion of these inspections. The other thing that I'd note is that your program structure should plan for non-compliance. You'll see the words corrective action registration applications and corrective action permit applications. And we define corrective action as an application that is required by the agency or its agent in order to rectify a violation of the regulations. And I'd also encourage you to plan for complexity in the event that you get a permit application in the future. Those can be tricky. And so to our fee schedule, we added a provision for extra assessments, which basically allows an increase in the application fee if the application required a an amount of technical expertise that was beyond what the city could do to review it. We haven't used this yet. This is something that we use relatively frequent in our wetland permit application processing, but we've added it to our APA regulations in the event that we need it in the future. So then when you get to regulation adoption, I would just encourage you, if you don't have DEEP's municipal manual, get one, keep it close by, review all the program elements, and kind of prep yourself for questions well in advance of the adoption process, and use that public hearing process to further spread the word and increase understanding. Because you're going to want all of the property owners within the Aquifer Protection Area to know what you're doing. So by the end of the day, this is our municipal manual, and it's been well loved. So thank you, DEEP, for putting that together. It's an excellent resource. Part of the regulation adoption is that you add the Aquifer Protection Area to your zoning map. This is our zoning map, and the blue is our Aquifer Protection Area. And the pale yellows are residential areas. So generally you're not regulating, you don't have any facilities within your residential areas. For Norwalk, we have commercial corridors in red and the purple colors. So think gas stations, auto body repair, on-site dry cleaning facilities. We also have a light industrial zone right at the heart of our Aquifer Protection Area. And we have a EPA Superfund site also within our Aquifer Protection Area. So I would say that if it would have been fantastic if Aquifer Protection was in Norwalk a very long time ago. Unfortunately, we have this kind of nexus of a lot of high risk uses within our Aquifer Protection Area. And if you are a community that is, just starting Aquifer Protection regulation, understand that it is a huge opportunity to protect your public drinking water supplies and make land use decisions now that are protective of the aquifer, because it's a lot easier to protect than to deal with previous contamination. So there's that. And then just going back to come up with a pitch, tie it back to that everyone drinks drinking water, and that we're here to reduce the chance of contamination of drinking water. So then the initial registration, I think some of you have already done the initial registration, and maybe some have not yet. So I'll just break it down into kind of the forms that are involved, the maps that your applicants will need, material management plan basics, and then stormwater management plans. For the forms, don't reinvent the wheel. This is the state. DEEP has made an excellent form that you can use. This is the state form, and this is our we've changed our header and footer, but use the state form. Don't reinvent the wheel. Get to know what parts of the form applicants will get wrong. In Norwalk, we pretty consistently had issues with who is the registrant and what is their business name. They should be a legal business in Connecticut and searchable under the state of Connecticut business search. And oftentimes they're doing business under another name, and so they should list both of those. They often often get confused about whether they're the facility owner or the site owner or both. And then on part 5, where they, even though it says all boxes must be checked, I swear only like 50% check all boxes. So just become familiar with the forms as you get those initial registrants filling them in. Those are the 2 parts that we found most often need to be corrected. In Norwalk, we have a lot of facilities that are in need of registration that are leased, that the property owner and the facility operator are not the same. And property owners were very interested in kind of keeping tabs. So we actually did add a section to the state form for landowner operation. It's funny, initially, property owners really wanted to be involved because they wanted to make sure that their lessees or their tenants registered, because they wanted to keep their options open for who they leased their property to. And over the years, we've had more owners kind of change tact and go from, I want to keep my options open to, I want to reduce my potential liability. Maybe since I'm in the Aquifer area, I don't want to have, this kind of tenant. So it's kind of been neat to see that shift in mindset from some of the property owners. A sign of success, I guess. The registration forms require that a copy of the registration be sent to DEEP, to the Department of Public Health, and to your local water company. Norwalk didn't have the operating funds for additional postage at the time, so we have the applicants send that to all of them. We found that applicants didn't often comply with that, so we added a self-certifying form. It's not legally binding, but it's just another little extra step for applicants to say, yes, I sent copies of my application to all the people that you said I did. So I would recommend that you come up with something like that. And then for maps, there's 2 maps that are required with the registration. There's the kind of the location map of where a site is located within the Aquifer Protection Area. The city produced these for each of the 35 registrants. We knew that this would be a stretch for them to come up with their own map. And so if you have the capability of making a map, I'd recommend that you do that. And then there's the facility map. It's important to define the limit of the facility. This is a auto body repair shop. They don't own, it's a tenant, so they don't own the full property, but they operate only within this area. And so it's the facility map has to define their building area, but also the area of the land outside which they're responsible for in their operations. And the material management plans, again, when we found that most of our facilities need help filling out the material management plan, and you need to, again, come up with a pitch to explain to them that we're just trying to make sure that you reduce the risk of contaminating the water supply as much as possible. So again, use the DEEP form for material management plans. Move along. For best management practices on the form, facilities are self-certifying that they are meeting all the best management practices in section 12. But you should know that generally they don't really know what that means. So this is a drum labeled hazardous waste, and this is it here. It's exposed to rainwater. It's certainly exposed to public entry. And we had let them know that they need to do better. And so this was their first attempt. So it's now chained to a chain link fence. So that's a little bit more secure. It's in overpack drums, but they're now mislabeled as non-hazardous. And you can actually see in this one, it has the drum inside of it is in standing water, and the interior drum has rusted out. So it's not quite meeting the requirements. This is what they have today. Actually, I don't have newer photos, but they're getting there. So I'd say that BMPs, it's a process of working with the registrants to kind of slowly get them in compliance and thinking about how they're really managing their materials. BMP compliance. Here is a stock photo of BMP compliance. This is real life. I've never seen anything that looks like the slide on the right. This is inside a facility, and they're trying. They have some secondary containment within the building itself. Things are properly labeled, and they're giving it a whirl. I'm going to pass through these. Stormwater management plans are sometimes necessary. Things to look for are if a property has dry wells on the property, and if there is a clear indication that there is contaminated material going into those dry wells. This is a Valvoline facility, and you can kind of see these slicks of flow paths going down to, there's a dry well here and here. And as part of the registration, we had them do a stormwater management plan to better manage their stormwater, and also just the amount of petroleum products that were coming out of the building. So they previously had 3 dry wells. They now have a pipe system with a oil separator that then goes to a storm drain, and they've also significantly cleaned up their act as far as land management and its impact on stormwater. So once you've registered your facilities, one of the key processes that you need to set up is some way to track those registered facilities. Like I said, we had 35 registered facilities. We use it's just an Excel spreadsheet. We call it our APA tracker, and we update it every year. And each facility was given a number, and this number doesn't change. It's how I keep track of our 35 facilities. But it also has their Aquifer Protection Area, and this is the bottom of the sheet. The Aquifer Protection Area number, you want to come up with a numeration system to help you keep track of when they registered and therefore when they need to renew. We use the year is the first number. So at a glance, we can look to see that, okay, this one's going to be sometime in 2025. This one has expired. The red are our problem children. Here's another, 2020, 2019. And then each year we start our number over again. So this was the first registration that was issued in 2019. This was the first registration issued in 2020. And then you also want to keep track of your facilities that have expired, and it's good for record keeping to note that hopefully you have some facilities that were eligible for registration when you adopt the regulations, but for whatever reason they were vacated and never filled again. So yeah, just come up with a spreadsheet and a way to help you keep track, I'd say, is one of the most important BMPs. And I know that in the program series, there's going to be talk about setting up your webpage. And this is just a quick pitch to remind you to, once your initial registration is done, you're going to want to update your webpage again to show that the forms, the registration forms, they're no longer really an option for new businesses coming in. Those forms are going to be for re-registration of those limited registered facilities that you have. So you need to relay that to the public, that these are really going to be forms for existing registered facilities and no one else. And this determining regulatory status form is going to be for new businesses coming in. And I'll talk about that later. So this is kind of a joke. With that first registration, you can kick back and relax, which you can, but you're not really done. So I just have a few more slides of kind of, once you're done that registration, these are a few of the things that you need to do. So you need to come up with a process for those new businesses that want to set up shop in the aquifer protection area. If they are doing any of those higher risk activities, then they're prohibited. If they're not, then they can move in. And you need to come up with a way within your municipal review process to review them and assess whether they are prohibited or whether they can come in. And that's where that determination of regulatory status, which again is a state form, use that state model, put your letterhead on top, and it just kind of is a documentation confirming that new businesses that are moving in are not regulated activity facilities. And in Norwalk, we have, if you're getting a building permit, including a permit for a tenant fit up for a new business coming in, you start with the zoning office, and then you go to the conservation office and you get a green sheet for wetlands. And then you get, if you're in the aquifer protection area, you get a blue sheet for aquifer. And it's our way of communicating to the building department that this new business can be in the aquifer protection area, but they are either they're associated with a registered facility, one of those initial 35 facility places, or they are signing off that they are not doing any hazardous higher risk activities. And that's an important part of administering the regulation after you've initially registered your limited facilities. Just a quick slide about permits. A permit allows the registered facilities to add or to change the regulated activities that they do. And I would just say proceed with any permit application with caution. Really look at what's being proposed. We've had 3 permits issued in Norwalk, all with conditions, and all 3 have been problematic. And then, of course, the other part of any regulatory and administration is enforcement and the heavy thud of compliance. There are incremental steps to compliance from conversations at the facility, which I strongly recommend, to kind of an increase in severity. And hopefully there's an increase in kind of, this is the most frequent, the next most frequent, and you never get to these. And I'll just end with kind of the why you do enforcement and why you administer this program. This is one of our largest enforcement actions that we've had. This is a registered facility that's supposed to be doing all of their hazardous material management inside the building. And as you can see, they've got a lot of containers outside. So this is not a good BMP. These are more of the containers that are kind of in standing water. And that standing water is over a dry well that they've kind of patched and temporarily plugged, but can easily unplug. When we were doing that inspection, we saw this guy on a forklift drive by with more material and going to a different part of the facility. And we followed him and found a lot more and more materials that were being stored that had never been accounted for. And these are all toxic materials that obviously have a significant potential impact on our drinking water supply. This is in an industrial park, and going back to that facility map, this is the approved limit of the facility. And you can actually see this is a 2003 aerial photo, and you can see the material stored outside at that time. They had, without any review or legality, moved into the red areas as well. So a significant volume of hazardous materials within our aquifer protection area. The city, I think, we certainly have other avenues of enforcement, zoning, our fire marshal, but having the additive regulatory purview of aquifer protection really prompted fast reaction and enforcement and removal of, actually the tenant is completely gone, which is good. So I just encourage you to get out there, do annual inspections, and protect the aquifer. So key takeaway is that your program can have big impact. Businesses can have a huge negative impact on drinking water supply if they don't just have basic best management practices. And the administration, it's very periodic, kind of comes and goes, but it's relatively easy and it's a worthwhile effort. Set up processes. You want to set up processes to keep track of the registered facilities and when their registration renewal happens, and you need a process to keep track of new businesses. Once you're done with that initial registration, again, get ready and set up your processes to deal with enforcement, to deal with permit applications if they ever come through, and to deal with new businesses that come into your town. And then lastly, know the best management practices, know what it looks like when facilities are not in compliance, and inspect the facilities so that you can help them be truthful when they do self-certify on their registration that they're doing all these BMPs. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexis. That was very insightful. I learned a lot from your presentation. Hopefully, the other viewers did too. And I guess now we'll just open it up for some Q&A time. And I can start off with one question while we, people who also have questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask, or enter in the chat, and then I'll make sure Alexis sees it. But I'm curious, early on in your presentation, you mentioned about the importance of communication with the facilities, even as you're adopting the regulations. I know in our region, there's a few communities who are working on updating their regulations. So they may have already adopted them, but are like updating to the 2010 regs. So I'm wondering if you could give some advice about what it would be like to communicate maybe after you've already adopted them, and how you would initiate that, yeah, I guess relationship building process. Yeah.
I mean, I think that knocking on doors works works really well. I know that when we sent out those initial letters to all facility owners, we drove around and noted all businesses, their names, their addresses, and kind of their general area of business, and sent them a letter. And so are the regulations, are there, for the scenario that you wrote about, are there already registered facilities, or have they not gone through that initial registration process? Because I think that would really depend. So if you've already gone through your initial registration, you have your core group of registered facilities, and you've really already set up this group of, these are the registered facilities, and then the rest of the aquifer protection area is an area that is prohibited to the establishment of new operations that have any of those 28 higher risk activities. So I guess it depends on if you've already kind of split the impacted groups. The other entity that I didn't mention was the Chamber of Commerce. We did a lot of reaching out to them, and they really helped spread the news about the initial aquifer protection adoption. And we've also tried to keep them informed about the fact that regulated activities are prohibited in the aquifer protection area, so that when they are approached by, say, a auto body shop, for example, that wants to move in, our chamber and also our business development office here in the city know that unless that auto body shop is, if they're looking in the blob of aquifer protection, they have to be outside of the blob, or if they're in the blob, they need to be at a previously registered facility. Within aquifer, we have some garages, commercial garages that, you look at them and you think that would be perfect for an auto body shop. But when the regulations were adopted, those buildings were vacant, and there was no regulated activity going on there. And that means that, moving forward, there can't be. So you may have these, yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I a lot of letters and just knocking on doors.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's definitely really helpful. I'm going to stop recording, and there's a few questions in the chat, so we can